Welcome back, everyone, for our afternoon breakout sessions. Again, I'm Jessica Johnson, Manager of Business Development here at EC Council. It's my pleasure to introduce one of our first breakouts of today. Kirsten Renner is a Senior Director of Recruiting at Novetta, which is now Accenture Federal Services. With over 20 years of experience, Kirsten has been primarily supporting the information field in the government sector for over a decade. She's also known for her volunteer activities, including her involvement in the car hacking village, as you can see from her beautiful flag behind her. And today she's speaking on how to turn bad job ads into opportunities. Kirsten, take it away.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. I want to have two tiny disclaimers before I get started. I hate to call it running a marathon this morning because I didn't do super awesome, but at least I finished. So if I say anything really bizarre or I look beaten down, that's why, because that happens. And when I transferred the content of these slides to this amazing template, I lazily didn't do any of the animations that I did in previous iterations of this content. So they will be slightly less visually interesting for that reason, but you will still get to see everything. And feel free to participate and let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully my screen is showing. And welcome to my talk. So this is me letting you know that in my opinion, sucky job ads, and I hear you guys talking about it all the time, you all, and I know it happens, I know it's out there, I know it's frustrating, I hear you, I believe you, I trust you. I need you to hear me out. Every job ad is in fact an opportunity for you, and here's how. So who am I real quick? As previously mentioned, I'm the Senior Director at Novetta. I've been there 5 years, and we are midway in the integration process of joining as the National Security Portfolio at Accenture Federal Services. So exciting times. I am a college dropout, and I mentioned that because it becomes relevant in the conversation that we are about to have. And I started doing software development in the 90s, a little bit of IT at startups and local government. I have been recruiting since the early 2000s, and as mentioned, been in this specific space in the GovSec, InfoSec space for a little over a decade, and listed a few of my prior speaking engagements. So all of our perspectives are in fact different, right? We're all in different stages in our career journeys. And so each of us, particularly women and other underrepresented groups and individuals, they just have their own unique, we all have our own unique sets of challenges already that we are facing as we're looking for jobs and as we're looking for opportunities. And so I just want to take this one thing and try to make it better. So as much as we try, and we try to coach the employers to do a better job. We try to notice what they're writing and coach them and teach them to do a better job. I think that's a very lofty goal. We'll never stop trying. However, if we can find a way to help candidates get past those job descriptions if they're bad, which a lot of them are, then that's a much more achievable solution to this problem. So I mentioned that Jeff Moss wrote on the DEF CON site. I put that on there when I was speaking at DEF CON, but it still makes sense for this talk as well. That half of you reported that you don't even know how to find your next job. And as I mentioned earlier, women and persons of color are statistically less likely to apply for a job that it seems like when you look on paper. you're not an exact match for. You just skip it. I hope, if nothing else comes out of this talk, I hope that when you don't see a match, you apply anyway. Do me that favor. Apply and tell me how it turned out. So we're going to think about building a target list for what it is that you want to do next. Identify what the blockers are, avenues for connecting, and effective interviewing, all as it relates to job postings. So one thing we can say for sure, regardless of the quality of the posting that you see, or whether or not you feel as though you are a match for it, at least it is indicative of they're likely hiring, right? Because they posted a job. So let's do a research project. I bet a lot of you actually enjoy doing research projects, right? Call it like it's like a little ocean thing. What you're going to do, you're going to say, oh, cool, company ABC is hiring. They have this job that matches what I'm looking for, or that seems like it's in line with what I'm looking for. So let's pretend in this scenario it's a sucky job ad, right? Okay, now what? Well, I know ABC's hiring, so what can I find out about what their culture looks like in their social footprint? What do they say that they're doing? Nothing against marketing. I have a lot of marketing colleagues and friends that I love and admire. But in this case, what I'm referring to, I'm less interested in what the website says about the company and what you might figure out by go to LinkedIn. No, I don't work for them. Go to LinkedIn and look at who else works there. Go into the social media places where you go. Probably Twitter is likely for the most of you where you go the most. Go to Twitter and see what the people who work there are saying about each other and their job and their boss. Take a look on their profiles. This is a cool trick. So if my company's hiring and you look at my company and you look at who else works there with the same job title that you're looking for, I want to be a SIGINT analyst. How many SIGINT analysts work at that company? Go onto LinkedIn and I'm going to search for that job title, and you click the people option and you're going to see some job titles, or you're going to see some people with that job title. Scroll through the history of their employment. How did they move up in their careers? And did they have to leave their current companies to get to the next level, or did they have, it's a really cool thing, this is important, if you notice that they're growing within the same company, that tells you that that's a place where you might be able to grow as well. So look at how they're changing in their employment history. And do the things that you're noticing, that you're seeing in the social footprints of the company and the people who work there, do those things match up with where you are currently in your employment journey? So I did grab a couple things off Twitter here real quick, even though I really didn't do a good job redacting at least one of them. You can see who it is. And I left Alyssa on there because she said I could. I try not to use people's things that they've said unless I ask them permission. Plus, who doesn't want to see Alyssa's beautiful face? So this is the nonsensical job ad that someone's complaining about. This is a really unreasonable one. You can read them. I'm sure they'll share these slides, and I believe they're recording this. You can see them later. I won't read them to you. But the point of this is that you all are talking about this all the time. In fact, I was tempted to, when I saw it recently, a really popular person on Twitter screen captured a horrible job ad, and it got so much traffic and so many people jumped into it. Like, you're all really passionate about this, or so it seems. So again, this is just me telling you what you already know, just evidence that the community is talking about it and it's a real problem. One of the things that you've mentioned is, wait a second, do certain terminologies mean, are they hidden messages, right? Like if it says looking for a self-starter, does that mean that They're not going to train you. They're not going to help you. Not necessarily. But that, I get it. I hear you. If it says fast-paced environment, does that mean that they want you to do a million things? Maybe you need to find out. You need to find out a little bit more. Don't assume. Don't assume. Keep track of the things that pop in your head when you see it and you make the assumption, and they very well may be right. Keep track of. So when we're going to get you to the interview table, and they ask the famous question at the end, what do they say? They say, do you have any questions for me? And you're going to go, yep. And you're going to say, when you say fast paced, what do you mean by that? When you say self-starter, what do you mean by that? And this is going to start a conversation so that we're not assuming a bad thing when it might turn out maybe they'll give you a really good explanation. Maybe they'll go, yeah, fast paced, but here's what I mean. There's so many opportunities and you can get involved in a bunch of things. And my point is, you're not being illogical in these assumptions, but just keep track of all those questions that pop in your head. Don't let them prevent you from moving forward and exploring the job, even if the job ad seems a little sketchy to you. Just keep track of those things. So I did a survey. I don't have the follower count for it to have gotten, thousands of responses. So this is not scientific data or statistics, but half of you say you ignore the job ad. If it sucks, you ignore it. Or if you don't seem like the perfect match, you ignore it. Remember, I asked you not to do that anymore. And I hope after you hear this, you won't. So one thing that I do every year for the last few years is I think of, what do I want to talk about this year? And I start submitting those talks, and I will use that same content all year long, or all con season long. So by the time I get to here today, I've maybe done this talk 5 times. But what I do before I do the next iteration of the talk is I do a little bit of research, and I see what's relevant, what are people talking about, how can I tie it in to what I'm about to speak about. And I keep seeing this phenomenon described as the Great Resignation, and I'm wondering, well, God, why are people leaving, right? So let me look into this a little bit further. So I see this Inc. magazine article, and I was pleased, actually, because I remember I mentioned that my company was purchased by Accenture, and I see Accenture's name on the research paper, so I start reading, and it's 70 pages long. I'll share the link with you guys later if you're interested. But it's a long article. I just took a piece of it out, but I immediately figured out who the authors were and sent them an email and was like, wow, can I quote you? Because this is obviously Harvard and Accenture did research on what we're talking about. And one of the things that they said that I'm quoting here is that those researchers said, a big problem, that's on the employer side is in fact less than stellar writing job ads. I call this talk, sucky job ads, less than stellar. So yeah, my point is Harvard's researching this. This is something that Inc. magazine wrote an article about. And how can we get to the untapped talent? So the people, those of you who are out there who aren't even going to be attracted to a company that might be a great fit for you simply because of the less than stellar job post. So more disclaimers, actually. Looks like maybe I have a question. Okay, cool. So when to stand by and when to run. 2 things that I've been asked in the past and that I hear people speaking about is, wait a second, that job ad that I'm looking at over here, it looks like it's written specifically for one person or for a small group of people. Does that happen? Yes. Have I done it? Yes. Not recently, not at my current job, but yes. And there's reasons why. One of the examples that I've cited is the customer said, we want at least one of the people who wrote this specific tool. Now, if I said the tool, everybody would know who I was talking about. I don't want to embarrass the people because we actually recruited a couple of them, but it was written specifically for that person. So does that mean you can't do it? Another example that I came up with when I was talking about this, and the reason why is because Kathleen Smith, who I think everybody knows and loves, was moderating the talk that I was giving, and it popped in my head. What if I wanted to apply to a job that was written specifically to attract her, and it listed all the things that she has done that I have not done, right? Especially if it says founded a thing or pioneered a thing or created a thing. Well, if she did those things and I didn't do those things, am I actually capable of doing the job? So that's when you are prepared. Remember, I said if those hidden messages pop into your head, write it down so that you can address it. Write these things down too. You know what? I actually don't think I could fit in her shoes, but pretend for the example that I did. I said, I'm at the interview table. Although I haven't created these things that she created or done these things, I created these other things, right? So she started Career Hacking Village, or she partnered in that. I did this Car Hacking Village thing, right? So kind of the same, right? So again, that's not a real example. That's just me showing you that I'm going to sit down at the table and I'm going to say, although I didn't do that, I showed you a capability and a willingness and an ability to do something very similar. Can we consider that, right? And a good employer, if you don't get the job, you didn't get the job at a place that isn't a good fit for you, not the other way around. Because if they're smart, they'll go, you know what, that's a good point. If only one person did this thing, and I can't have that one person, but this other person did something really similar, I want to give that person a shot, right? So, and then there's one other area where if the question pops up, I'm going to tell you right now, my answer is there are certain things, and I won't give these things a ton of attention. And I redacted some of it because it's awful, but I don't know if these people, these are real job ads, sadly. I don't know if they thought they were clever or cute or what they thought. But clearly, if the company is this awful, right, that they're talking about looking for a female, French, Italian, Spanish, just gross. Skip those ones. They're awful. I wish these were a joke, but they're not. Okay, let's talk about that target list we mentioned earlier. What's important to you? Yeah, money's important, right? But it's not everything. Yes, you should fight for it. No, you should never tell them your salary. And yes, you should always do research on what this is a side tangent on what you should be, what you deserve, what the market is paying for the job they're asking you to do. You should do that for yourself, be your own best advocate, and if you can't, get a recruiter who will do it for you. More about that later. However, don't forget there's so many other things. There's flexibility, there's schedule, there's commute, and frankly, these days, every candidate that we talk to, that my team talks to, they want to be remote or partially remote, because COVID proved to most companies that a lot of work can be done remotely. So think about those things. Think about your title, think about growth opportunities, think about everything that's important to you. So there is required versus preferred. There will be more about that later. Excuse me, think about what are the deal breakers for you. If the company has mandates or policies or processes that are just deal breakers for you, I'm not working somewhere that does this or this or this. That's your personal preference. So you keep track of that and know what those things are. And then frankly, most of you have some engineering component to your work. Rank and proceed, just like you would any, it's like you're reverse engineering this problem, right? What do you do when your customer wants a thing? You build a requirements list, and you talk to your stakeholders, and you rank all the requirements. Do the same thing for yourself when you're thinking of your next job opportunity. This is the slide that one of the slides that I was mentioning earlier, where how I did it before was I would mention the item and then I would have the red thing pop up. But I was lazy and didn't do that, so I'm sorry. So it's not animated, and I won't run you through this whole thing. I know who wrote this. I know what they were trying to do. But let's talk a little bit about why it's not great. You say polygraph, but you don't tell me what type of polygraph. And frankly, there's more than I even listed in terms of polygraph. So in their defense, you aren't supposed to say the type of polygraph on the job ad. But again, remember that list. You're going to write that down. What type of polygraph? Remember I said I'm a college dropout? I think every job, at least every job I've had recently, including the job I have now, and I guess the job I'm about to have, they all require a college degree. Clearly, you don't actually have to have one. So figure out, does comparable experience count? And I won't, again, I promised I wouldn't run through the whole thing, but as you can imagine, when the way that they listed, for example, what they want you to have demonstrated experience using, you know, all these open source tools, but they didn't mention Wireshark. Actually, if I'm still the example, sorry, I do have Wireshark experience, but I don't have any of that other stuff. Does that count? Also, when you mention all those programming languages, okay, let me break out the pen again for that list of questions that I have. First of all, when I'm talking to the recruiter, and if they don't know the answer, they should find out. And then when you're talking to the hiring manager, well, I see some objective things listed here. I see some scripting languages here. Tell me what you're looking for. They should have written it a little different. They should have said something like, do you have an object-oriented language experience and some embedded experience and scripting experience? Okay, yeah, instead of listing all those things. Because if you have some things that aren't listed, I would hate for you to think, I would hate for you to think that you're not a fit because you don't have that when you have something comparable. And this is also harmful for scraper tools. If you don't know what that is, every company probably has an applicant tracking system, and there are scraper tools that are looking through the applications for the keywords in the job description, and it's going to miss out on the person, like I listed over here, has Objective-C, but maybe doesn't have assembly. It's unfortunate because you're going to miss out on the comparable talent. They should not say strong or good. Those are subjective terms. How in the world are you measuring or quantifying that which is strong or good? That shouldn't be in the job description. I have a funny feeling that desired and basic quals got mixed up. Maybe that was a lot to unpack. I do understand. If you have any questions, let me know. Somebody has a question. During the interview process, I've noticed many people insist on getting a salary range. What should we do in cases like this? Excellent question. In certain states, and it's going to probably eventually be federal, but in certain states, that's an illegal question. If what you mean is them asking, well, let me take that back. If they ask you for your current salary, that is illegal. If they ask you for a range, remember when we talked about the target list, I would answer it that way. You can say, well, I'm looking in this range. You can be as broad or as specific as you are comfortable, okay? And you can mention, I'm really looking in the range of really 120 to 150, and the reason why I'm giving you something so broad is because I want to make sure that I'm going to get some training. I want to make sure that's part of it. I want to make sure I can be incentivized by my performance. Will there in fact be an incentive compensation plan built in? If so, and you offer me 120 when I know I could get 150, I know that I can get there if you give me a fair and clear set of goals and an incentive compensation package with a good range on how I can make 120 into 150. That has occurred in my life almost to verbatim. And again, you can say, I'm willing to, if that 150 mark, if you can't quite get there, if that's not in the budget for this position for whatever reason, I get it, I understand. But if I can work from home twice a week, or if I can remember those different things that you are valuing, if you can mention those things, you can answer the question that way. I think I'm missing some of the questions because the screen's not big enough. I don't know how to make it bigger, sorry. I'm gonna scroll real quick and see if I missed anyone else. Okay. How would you answer if a potential firm asks for your floor for a salary? What is the least you will accept? That's odd, right? That's an odd thing to ask. Flip it around on them. If they say, what's the least amount of money you would ask? You can say, well, what's the most you can pay? Right? Rather than them flipping it onto you as the candidate and saying, what's the least amount of money I can purchase you for? Say, well, you answer me, what's the most you can pay? I'll figure out where that fits into where I'm comfortable, right? I wish that it wasn't such an uncomfortable thing. I haven't recruited anyone in a really long time, but when I did, and that people will tell you that one of the things that I always did, whether my employers liked it or not, I always started at the finish line, right? So I would say, I would tell someone who asked for less than I knew I could pay them. I'd say, well, I can pay you this, and they'd be like, I accept. And so not every recruiter is going to do that for you, but you can flip it around and just say, what's the budget, right? What flexibility do you have? A good company is even going to go so far as to know, the cap is right here. They're basically basing it on profitability most of the time. How long has the position been open? How much can they charge for the person that they're hiring? And between what they can charge the customer and what they're going to pay you, well, in the services industry, of course, they look at the profitability range. And different companies, and I spelled different companies are going to be tighter on the budget, larger, and there are companies, and I've worked for a few, that they'll take a loss on somebody that they need, somebody that they see a potential in, somebody that they see a future with. And frankly, in a lot of cases, if the customer is going, you can't leave this position open any longer, and keep the contract. In those instances, and you can maybe even go so far as to ask, how long has this position been open? Wait and see, feel out the situation. But frankly, how long has this position been open? That's going to help you understand how desperate they are, frankly. If the position's been open for 3 months or 6 months, or in some cases a year, I think they can find a way to meet your expectations. So ask that. That's a little trick for you. It's going to really piss off some hiring managers. Okay, we already talked about on having a degree. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of the certs. Don't be afraid of the degree. If you don't have what they're asking for, there are situations where some customers may be more so on the government side. I've been in the GovSec so long, I don't know, where they have some situations where they're like, you have to have this certification. It's very annoying, especially for certs that are really expensive. So ask, hey, I don't have that CEI-SSP you're looking for, or that SANS cert that you're looking for because I'm not a millionaire and I can't afford it, or because I just don't have the time. Will you train me? Will you give me the opportunity to get that cert that I don't have that you're asking for? Because if you do, I'll get it. And you can literally work that into the negotiation. I've seen it. You can say, hey, I don't have that thing that you're looking for, but if you train me and you pay for it, I'll get it. Now, it could actually be a condition of your employment as well. But yes, you can do that. Recruiters, I mentioned them before. Remember, they should be a representative of you. Yes, they get overwhelmed. Yes, they're trying to fill a lot of positions and they're talking to a lot of candidates, sometimes hundreds of people in a week. It's crazy. But they should either find the time for you, find the answers for you, never bush crap you, never make up stuff they don't know the answers to. Find out. They should say, when you ask a question that they don't know the answers to, they should say, you know what, good question, I'm not sure, this is what I think, I'm going to verify that for you, and they should get back to you, whatever the case may be, whether it's a specific question about the work environment, the team size, the ability to grow, the types of technologies that you would have access to. I've heard a lot of people say, you know, you could take Picasso and you could put a piece of construction paper in front of him and a crayon, and he would probably create something amazing because he's Picasso. However, if you gave him a bunch of canvases and a studio and a whole bunch of paint and some glitter, it's going to be way cooler, right? So find out. You are the Picasso. You are the artist. You are the person with skill that we're trying to get. Find out what you're going to have access to. What's your work environment? What's the team look like? Are they collaborative? Are they competitive? Which can be fun. Find out. Pre-prepare. Remember, I've been talking about it the whole time with that little imaginary pen. Pre-prepare for what they're going to ask you. And maybe even ask it before, or mention it before they ask it. I know it says on this description that I need this and I don't have that, but guess what I do have? Be ready to talk about that in the interview when you get there. The recruiter, if they're good, they're going to get you to the interview table. And when they do, be pre-prepared to address anything that wasn't a match on that job description that we talked about. This is your chance to speak for yourself and be your very best advocate. And don't forget to ask questions. So I love that we've done so much, that we all adapted to COVID, and that we do things online and that we do things hybrid. I think it gives a lot more access to people who didn't have the time or the ability or the funds to run all over the place and jump on planes and go places. So that is one good thing that has come out of all of this. This is where we're connecting. We're connecting at events. We're networking here. You know, I got to tell you, if an employer or a customer comes to me and says, "What conferences should I go to?" This just happened this week, and they say, "Show me a list. Here's where I should be going. Should we sponsor this? Should we buy a table and sit in the vendor area?" If it's up to me, I would much rather be in a village, or be in a CTF area, or be where people are watching talks. Way more interested in that than people just coming by to pick up swag off of a table. It's cool. Pick up your cool swag, talk to whoever's there. They're doing their job. They're doing what they're there to do. I'm not saying that there's zero value in that, but there's way more value for both sides, for everyone to be connecting and building relationships at CTFs, at villages, at the talks. The people who are sitting there with you watching a talk are the people who are interested in what you're interested in. That could be your next peer, your next colleague, your next boss, right there in those rooms, especially when you go over to a CTF or into the village space and look at the work demos and stuff. This is where we're like playing. We're like kids at a giant science fair and we're tinkering around and we're being curious about the same things. This is going to be, I promise, one of the best opportunities for you to connect. And don't forget, gosh, I don't have stock in it, but Twitter. I last week or a week, 2 weeks ago, I just randomly tweeted. I try not to post a lot about jobs, but I just said something like, does anybody want to work remotely? Here's some links. And so far, 2 of the people who replied to that have gotten an offer from my company. Very cool. So interact. Be paying attention to what people are talking about in your space, and not just on LinkedIn. I can't say enough good things about the mock interview and resume building workshops that are occurring at tons of conferences. It's a great opportunity for you to sit down and practice. I actually don't hate the idea of recording yourself, practice in the mirror or record yourself, for the interviews, to figure out, oh, I hate, like, I'm going to go back and watch this. It's being pre-recorded, and I'm going to count how many times I said, it's going to be like 72. It's awful. But notice what you see. But notice what it is that you do in your behavior. And there's so much that we're doing online. Like, are you ever looking at the camera? Are you being interactive? Having all this crap in the background is actually really distracting, and I shouldn't have done that. So don't do that, like on your actual video interviews if you're having those. And that's about it. Are there any other questions that have popped up? I hope I didn't miss any. You can always hit me up on LinkedIn. My DMs remain open most of the time on Twitter, as long as people are being nice. And if there's no other questions, you can always hit me up and let me know if you need anything.
Awesome. Great points there for those individuals looking for other career opportunities. Thanks so much for your time today, Kirsten. Doesn't look like we have any other questions. We have a shy audience today, or it's because it's after lunch and they're all tired. I don't know.
I'm tired too.
Absolutely. After running a marathon, I can only imagine.
I'm going to do that bath and wine thing here in a sec.
Yes, please do. And thank you so much for your time, Kirsten. I look forward to having you contribute to some talks and maybe some recruiting affairs that we have going on in the future. And actually, we do have one more question, if I can just read it to you.
Sure.
Do you recommend creating an online presence when looking for a job?
That's a good question. So there's a couple different ways to look at that. Be cognizant of, I'm not telling you not to be who you are, but be cognizant of what your footprint looks like if you are looking for a job. If you're looking for a job and all you do every single day is complain that your boss is horrible or so on and so forth, I'm not saying you're not allowed to do that. I am saying that recruiters can be stalkers, and they do look at what you're putting on social. I never go to Facebook ever, but I look on Twitter and LinkedIn. You should be able to say whatever the heck you want on Twitter, obviously, right? It's not a job board, but definitely, please, if you don't have a LinkedIn account, do that. I do understand, and I hear you, and I'm sorry, and I apologize on behalf of my whole profession. I get that the spam emails and the DMs out of nowhere are annoying. There are settings to protect you from that. You don't have to accept all of their messages. They're just doing their job. They're just trying to find you. But definitely put what you can on LinkedIn. It gives you the opportunity to say if you're looking for a job or if you're open to being contacted or not, and it lets them know, hey, I'm Jane Doe and I'm open to networking and I am a systems engineer. And if you are actively looking, you can have a statement on there that says, this is your your I am statement. I am a systems engineer looking to become a solutions architect. You just did the work for them. Now the recruiter knows this is who this is and this is what they want to do, and that fits what I'm searching for. And it doesn't hurt. You don't have to put every keyword in the world in there. But if you do care a lot about Elastic, or care a lot about, I always want to say blockchain just to make people laugh, but if you care a lot about AWS, or you care whatever it is that you care about that you want people to associate to you, you can put that in the description of your work or your experience, or the summary of what you do and what you're an expert at. That was a good question.
Yeah, it was. Next question, if it's okay with you.
Of course.
What are your thoughts on ATS? Who do you use? What do you look for in an ATS?
Oh boy, I have such passionate thoughts about this. I could talk for an hour and you don't have that much time. The best one I ever used was Greenhouse. I'm not gonna be able to use it that much longer. I love it. There are some good CRM tools. CRM tools, as long as they're used responsibly, are good, because it helps the recruiter stay connected to their pipeline. One of the things I was terrible at when I was recruiting was dropping the ball on accident on people. Now what I do is I respond to everyone, try really hard to respond to everyone, and then I say, do you mind if I introduce you to someone else? Just as a matter of time and not wanting to accidentally drop the ball on people. Not all applicant tracking systems are the same. I don't know that I'm allowed to, I mean, that's probably not okay for me to list all the ones that I've had a horrible experience with, but it's a lot. Some of them are terrible. Some of them are so terrible that I never looked at the job applications. Isn't that sad? I didn't look at them because the system was so difficult. I didn't search in the system, and I didn't bother looking through. It was such a hard user experience as a recruiter to work through the system. Like I said, I'm really spoiled right now. My applicant tracking system is amazing. It's user friendly. I can search around in it. I can very, very easily disposition through applications. I'm not going to list all the ones that are terrible, but if somebody wants to DM me later and say, what do you think of such and thus, I'll tell you. I've been doing this for a long time. I've probably worked with all of them. Some of them, believe it or not, in this day and age are so hard to navigate through. Some of them, if you want to customize them, you can't. You can't add a drop down without sending a help desk ticket to some third-party vendor and waiting and waiting and waiting. It's just, they can be your biggest ally or your biggest foe. The applicant tracking systems can. They're great when they interact with social media, when they're interactive with LinkedIn and Twitter and so forth, and they can pull those people in. In those cases, I will give a shout out to Cleared Jobs is fantastic, and they interact very well with most applicant tracking systems, including probably all of the ones I've used. With that scraping tool that I mentioned to you before, they will scrape out the resumes. You set it, you make the settings, say, here's what I'm looking for, and here's how often I want you to pull resumes that are being updated in this job board and stick them right into the applicant tracking system. It's pretty cool.
Awesome. Last question, and I liked this question. During one of the earlier presentations, they mentioned getting heavily involved in CTFs. Are these worth it when it comes to writing applicable skills in resumes, even if you do not place?
Yes, please. I want to know. I want to know, and my recruiters have been trained to want to know, and good recruiters will care that you participated. I don't care if you won or not. I don't care if you placed or not. It shows something about you to me that you're trying. I always say that the number one qualifier for every position is a willingness and ability to learn.